Hey everybody, I was just wondering, so if Cincinnati's in Kentucky, then Youngstown's in Pennsylvania, Dayton's in Indiana, and Marietta's in West Virginia, and Deshaun Watson is in Miami. Welcome to Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Welcome to today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out the show on social media. Hoty Raw Takes on Instagram, Facebook Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty, and Hoty Andrew on Twitter/X. Hope everyone had a wonderful weekend going into today. I'm glad to be back with you here as always. Make sure to check out the latest edition of Short Take Saturday. Well, I guess a lot of it's in the past, but please make sure to check it out anyway. See what predictions I got right. See what predictions I got wrong. Make sure to check out some of those other videos as well. We have a lot of stuff we've been covering lately all across the board, including NBA playoff wins, or in-season tournament wins, I should say. Along with more on football and predictions every week. We're doing that. We have the college football playoff coming up this weekend, too. I'm going to have predictions for that on Thursday's show back at my house in the studio. So I'll just emphasize that. We're going to have a whole college football prediction segment of the show. We'll have a lot more coming up on that as well. But today, let's just start off with an apology. And I want to apologize today to Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield absolutely mopped the floor with the Los Angeles Chargers the other day. And I just want to say it right out in the open. I was wrong. Baker Mayfield, I was wrong. I was wrong on Baker Mayfield. I really was, as a Browns fan. And listen, I personally never disliked the guy. I loved his blue-collar attitude. I loved the way he played football at times. I loved that energy he brought to a franchise that desperately needed it after a 1-31 stretch. I love all of it. But the bottom line is, we should have never moved off him. It's what it comes down to. We made the wrong decision to move off him. And at the time, it looked like Deshaun Watson was appealing, the shiny new toy, as maybe we would say. It literally looked like that to me. And I thought, Deshaun Watson, I'm going to go all in on this guy. Forgetting about his off-the-field issues, of course. I'm going to go all in on this guy for football purposes because we want to win a Super Bowl. And Baker Mayfield has shown us all that that may not necessarily be what all football is about. I mean, yeah, football is about winning the Super Bowl. The NFL, of course, that's the ultimate goal. But what football is really about is still being a consistent winner. And even if you aren't winning Super Bowls, if you're a consistent winner, you're staying relevant, and maybe you get a title out of it or two, you're having played watchable football, because it's hard to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. That would have been appealing, and Baker Mayfield probably could be bringing that to the Cleveland Browns right now. Instead, he's bringing it to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, having said that, yeah, I could go all over the map. He was coming off an injury. I was very hard on him in 2021. And so I want to apologize for Baker Mayfield for all that, because this Deshaun Watson situation here in Cleveland is just a mess. And as we saw against Kansas City on Sunday, this quarterback situation is essentially a mess. I mean, I don't know where you go from here. Obviously, it's going to be hard to bring back Deshaun Watson next year. You can't really sell the fan base on that. I mean, Jameis Winston, clearly just so turnover prone. As much as I like Jameis personally, and as much as I actually love rooting for him, it's just hard to sell if that's going to cost you ball games. Jameis Winston's costing you ball games at this point. And DTR, I'm not really sold on DTR. I wasn't even all in on keeping him this year. I would have kept Tyler Huntley. I thought that was a big mistake by the organization because Tyler Huntley has at least been in some relevant football games. DTR, you got to see what you have in him, but we don't know. And so the unknown is still there with DTR. Now, as I'm recording this video, there's been some reports that DTR could be the starter this upcoming Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I guess that we'll have to wait and see. I'm not necessarily sure I love that. I personally would be sticking with Jameis just because I think Jameis is going to be more of your bridge going into next year. But it's really a tough situation. It really is. His quarterback situation's a mess. It's a mess. And the Browns are probably a good quarterback away, but what's going to guarantee you get that good quarterback play next year? Are we so sure that Jameis's turnover-prone nonsense is going to just stop? I'm not. Are we sure that Deshaun Watson's going to come back and ever be the Deshaun Watson of old again? And there's been reports that Deshaun Watson may come back to Cleveland next year. I'm not sold on that. I'm not sold on that at all. He was a mess all season long. And he's in Miami on vacation right now. I don't know if he cares about football, let alone he should be starting for the Cleveland Browns next season. And DTR, yeah, we have to wait and see. He was clearly drafted in the 5th round, so there's no high expectations for him. So why should I have high expectations on him either? I don't. I have a low ceiling for a 5th-round pick. He's probably a good backup at the very best. And that's good, great, we keep him as a backup. But no, you can't keep that guy as a starter. I still think you have to learn to move off quarterbacks. Backup QBs are interchangeable. Obviously, it's a big position. You got to invest in it now because of all the quarterback injuries and the 17-game season and player safety and all that yada, yada, yada. But still, it's absolutely asinine to me to think that DTR is going to be the future of this team, because he's not. We've seen no evidence of that. And I think if he starts on Sunday, we're going to see even more evidence he shouldn't be. He didn't even look good in that last series against KC. Now, I get it. The Chiefs are a tough opponent. Their defense is really good, yada, 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 yada. That's all fine and great. But there's a lot of work to be done. There really, really is. A lot of work to be done with the Cleveland Browns offensively. The personnel is a big thing. Ken Dorsey, as I said, I think he should be fired at the end of the season. I would not fire Stefanski. I would not fire Andrew Berry. I would, in terms of draft picks, maybe fire Andrew Berry, but I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I think it's kind of a package deal situation. A lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And we're going to have to see if the Browns are able to pull it off. I think they possibly could, but it's going to come down to the wire, and it's going to be on Jimmy Haslam to figure all that out. It's on ownership. And ownership is probably responsible for the Deshaun contract, but at the same time, I mean, who knows who was really all in on Deshaun Watson? Jimmy clearly was, because he went along and signed off the deal. But did Andrew Berry advise it? Did Kevin Stefanski think Baker just wasn't the guy? Who knows? But they went all in on Deshaun Watson, and this is where we are now. You're a 3-11 football team. You're a 3-11 football team. That's not to say last season wasn't great. I still think last season gives every principle to build off on, to figure things out, and to try to repeat. But in the NFL, we know time flies fast. Houston already won a playoff game over you, and the Houston Texans traded you Deshaun Watson. And the Houston Texans possibly just won the biggest bargain deal possible. Now, the Texans don't look overall like football dream team enders this year, per se, but they're playing really good football. They already won the division relatively easily over there in the AFC South. The Houston Texans right now look like the better organization, and clearly they are. The Cleveland Browns are not a good organization as of this season. So we'll have to see. Things have been figured out over the last few years, and there's a long, long way to go. But I want to start off with apologizing to Baker Mayfield, and I'm rooting like mad for him in Tampa Bay, because that's just a fun football team. They absolutely clocked the Chargers the other day. Some other big games yesterday, obviously, the Atlanta Falcons beating the Raiders. The Raiders are just awful. There's no doubt about that. But Kirk Cousins is also just awful. The Falcons barely won that game. There's clearly been a lack of production in recent weeks from Kirk Cousins, which has been a little bit of a disappointment, because I think Kirk Cousins overall has a higher ceiling than that. I think Atlanta is going to eventually end up going to Michael Penix to start at quarterback, because Kirk Cousins is only giving you so much. I think Raheem Morris even said we're debating it. So we'll see. The Falcons, I think, should be a lot better than what they really are. I think Tampa Bay still outshines them in the division, but Atlanta also has that tiebreaker hanging over Tampa Bay's head. If they end up tying at the end of the season in terms of their records, Atlanta would go to the playoffs, or at least win the division, unless Tampa Bay's a wild card by some miracle, because you look at the NFC North and all that. But, you know, it's definitely a situation for Atlanta that needs to be looked at. Having said that, though, they're still in the thick of the playoff race. I'm not so sure Michael Penix, a quarterback that's never really even played a starting snap in the NFL, is the guy you want to put out there when you're trying to make a playoff push. But at the same time, if this is what you're going to get from Kirk Cousins, you might want to make the move. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, yesterday, Minnesota clobbering the Chicago Bears. Now, it's a great story, Sam Darnold. I'm still not sold on the Minnesota Vikings going on some miracle run to the Super Bowl. But having said that, if I'm the Minnesota Vikings, I debate bringing back Sam Darnold. I know you have a rookie quarterback in development. Sam Darnold probably going to go get his money somewhere else, but I mean, he played really good this year. But having said that, I'm not sold on the Vikings at all, but I really like what Kevin O'Connell and that coaching staff has done. The defense has played really, really well, too, especially against Chicago yesterday. Justin Jefferson, obviously, an all-world wide receiver. So, yeah, I mean, it's good for the Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings to be in that position, because Minnesota is really on Detroit's tail. Detroit lost to Buffalo, 48-42, a scoregami, by the way. But, that's big. Minnesota is keeping it tight with Detroit, and Detroit's going to have to try to pull away and win this thing. They already have the head-to-head, but that game between Detroit and Minnesota at the end of the season in the Motor City, that might be your last game of the year on Sunday Night Football to determine who wins that division, because Minnesota's keeping tail-to-tail with the Lions the entire year, and they haven't stopped. They've only lost 2 games, 2 back-to-back. Now, they've kind of had a cupcake schedule, but having said that, they also have to play Green Bay one more time, which is another thing that may be very interesting. So we'll have to see what takes place, but wow, what a situation going on there in the NFC North. Green Bay obviously beating Seattle. I thought Seattle could possibly have a chance in that game, but they're clearly outmatched. I think the Los Angeles Rams are going to end up winning that division based on that loss. Seattle's fun, but there's only so much you could do if you're the Seattle Seahawks right now with everything that's been put against your face, especially with the Green Bay Packers. But the Los Angeles Rams caught fire at the right time, sweeping the San Francisco 49ers for the first time since 2018. So, yeah, what a division it is out there in the West, because they're all close too. Arizona's still kind of in the thick of it, and you look at San Francisco, they look like a mess right now, and they probably will remain a mess, but you know what, injuries really piled up for them, and I think that's really derailed their season. The Philadelphia Eagles have really gone on a roll. They've been absolutely rolling like there's no tomorrow. I mean, I think they've won 10 straight games, it is right now, or 11 it might be. Beat Pittsburgh easily the other day. Philadelphia Eagles right now look like the best team in the NFC. Because of all the injuries Detroit's piling up with, I think it's going to be tough for Detroit to really be able to not overcome all those injuries. So I think Philadelphia is going to end up really making it tough on them to win this division, or win the NFC, I should say, the conference. You look at Washington, they look like a wild card team still, but there's still a lot of football left to be played in terms of these 3 games. A lot could happen. I think the wild card race is pretty much set over in the NFC. It's just going to come down to division winners. The AFC, I think you already have your 7 teams. Indianapolis had a shot to kind of make it a little bit more competitive with Denver, and they didn't do so. So to me, I think the Denver Broncos essentially blew their opportunity. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts blew their opportunity against the Denver Broncos. So, yeah, a lot going on over here in the AFC too, but the AFC, I think the bracket is pretty much set. The Chargers look like they're on their way to some kind of possible collapse, but they already have the tiebreaker with Cincinnati. I don't think they played Miami this year, so Miami, if they do end up winning their last couple games here, they might end up taking over for the Los Angeles Chargers, but I don't think that's going to happen at this point. The Denver Broncos kind of solidified themselves. The Chargers solidified themselves earlier on in this year, and I still think they have a really good defense overall, although it didn't look like that against Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield torching. Probably the best quarterback performance we saw against the Los Angeles Charger defense was from Baker Mayfield. I mean, he was absolutely lights out. Even better than Joe Burrow was against the Charger defense, which was really impressive. So, props to Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You look at the rest of the AFC, too. I mean, you talk about teams like the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers obviously going to the playoffs already, but it's the division race now. Can they or Baltimore end up winning it? They have to play each other at the end of this week. I like Baltimore at home to kind of come back and put the Steelers' woes aside, but I still think the Steelers right now are the better team and should win the AFC North. I don't know if they're going to win a playoff game, but Pittsburgh has done enough to me to prove that they should win this division. But Baltimore, of course, being Baltimore, they should be okay. And you know what's interesting about them is they actually lost to the Raiders earlier this year and the Cleveland Browns. So 2 really weird losses for the Ravens. But their defense is streaky in terms of their secondary especially. They got a lot of work to do, but man, can they run the football, and Lamar could surely pass it. So I think Pittsburgh's going to end up winning the division. Cincinnati could make things interesting in terms of trying to clinch a wild card berth, but I think it's going to be really hard for them. They do play Denver, so that could be a head-to-head matchup that maybe affects them in terms of if they go 9-8. But I think the Broncos literally have to lose their last 3 games in order for them to not solidify their spot in the postseason, or the Chargers have to collapse, or Baltimore. I think Baltimore's already got the tiebreaker with them, so I don't think that's going to happen. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be tough for Cincinnati, and that game against Cleveland this week is going to be a big determining factor of it for the Bengals, too. So there's a lot going on in the NFL, a lot of crazy scenarios. I think when you look at the AFC, and I've said it numerous times, the playoffs are set over there. In terms of the teams, it's just a matter of seeding. The NFC, division winners are getting a little interesting, but I don't buy into Seattle, and I don't buy into Atlanta. I think Tampa Bay and LA will be playing some football in January. We'll have to see what takes place, though. A lot going on over there. The NBA Cup game taking place today. I don't think many people care about it, but we'll talk about it anyway. The Milwaukee Bucks, the Oklahoma City Thunder, 2 small market teams. I like that aspect, I guess, of it, because small market teams are always kind of fun. Or Milwaukee's like a mid-sized market, yada, yada, yada. Still small market teams. Giannis, SGA. Good matchup overall. None of the stats are going to count towards the regular season. The game doesn't count towards the regular season. It's just hey, you had a really good cup match in the middle of the season. So whatever. That's fine. It's great. I don't even care. I mean, whatever. It's cool. It's fun. Milwaukee had some fun. I mean, obviously they got hot as of late, as they needed to, because they have really good talent. They've been underachieving the last few years. And you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, obviously with no Chet Holmgren in the lineup, they still figure out ways to win. They're clearly a great basketball team, and they have probably the best culture, at least one of the best cultures in the NBA. They're probably turning into the new version of the Cleveland Guardians of the NBA, where Oklahoma City has always been competitive. They have superstar players, but they never win the title. I think Oklahoma City has a nice shot to possibly do it this year. I would love to see the Cavs and the Thunder in the finals. I don't know if that's going to happen. I probably would say the Boston Celtics are probably the finals team, and I'm even here in Cleveland. But yeah, that's still a possibility, but I am really fascinated by that as well because the Oklahoma City Thunder are fun. They have some great players. They're well coached. They're a small market team, as I mentioned, which I love. It's fun to watch them. But this NBA in-season cup thing is just You win the in-season cup, like, good for you. You win the in-season cup, whatever. The stats don't matter. The numbers and the scores and all that do during the cup games and all that and determining position. But, you know, I'm not really that much sold on that situation. And I think it's a little bit redundant and ridiculous. That's the NBA Cup for me. Now, let's talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers and that big win over the Brooklyn Nets. Evan Mobley, if he's not an all-star player already voted in, like just give him the ticket he's in, then I don't know what else to say. Evan Mobley, what can't this guy do? What can't he do? He's been phenomenal. It's unbelievable what Evan Mobley's been able to do offensively and defensively. That game against Charlotte where he shot all those three-pointers, I love Evan Mobley. He's, I think, going to be the second best player on the Cleveland Cavaliers next to Donovan Mitchell, and he may compete with the best player eventually down the line if he keeps it up. Evan Mobley's a superstar. He is like a Tim Duncan Jr. in some ways. I don't think he's going to be as good as Tim Duncan, but man, he could sure get to that level at some point. He is really, really good, and the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to benefit from that. Darius Garland offensively has been absolutely a rock star. Jared Allen has been a rock star. And I want to credit the Cleveland Cavaliers once again. We doubted this core four thing, and maybe it doesn't win you a championship. But the way they're playing consistently with Kenny Atkinson in the regular season, we never saw this with J.B. Bickerstaff. We saw some great Cavs defense, but we didn't really see this offense take off. And a lot of these same defensive principles are there with Kenny Atkinson. And I know these points and talking points we've been saying about the Cavs are getting repeated over and over and over again, but they're doing a damn good job of it, and they're winning basketball games. They have the best record in the NBA, and they believe they're contending for an NBA title, and they very well may be. It may be a wild run come April and May in the NBA postseason. It really may be, and I hope it is. And this town was awesome when the Cleveland Cavaliers won the finals in 2016. The vibe was great. It's starting to get good again. I mean, it's starting to feel like that era of the mid-2010s where the Browns stunk, but the Cavs and the Guardians gave us something to root for. And so far, than not, the Cavs are really doing a good job of that. They're living up to expectations. They're exceeding them, in my opinion. I still think they have to get to the NBA Conference Finals or bust. If they do not get to the Conference Finals this year, this season was a bust no matter what. But if they get to the finals and prove us wrong that they are a contender and they can win with the core four, then damn, this is a really good basketball team that got to the finals. I'm not saying win the finals. I'm saying just get to the finals. I still think the Boston Celtics bench overshadows the Cavs bench to a degree, but the Cavs probably do have the best bench in basketball as well. Guys like Ty Jerome, guys like Karis LeVert. I mean, Tristan Thompson brings a veteran presence. He's the guy from 2016 to a degree. So, you know, there's a lot to be excited about when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it's continued. It's been sustained. Is Kobe Altman going to make a move now mid-season that helps you get another guy to bring in here and help elevate that bench, elevate the big man spot? Because we know how good Jared Allen is. The guy's a double-double machine. He may not drop 25 points in a game or get 13 rebounds every game, but he gets so many double-doubles. It's hard to count. He had a double-double this weekend. I mean, he is really good, Jared Allen, too, and he's probably your fourth best player. And if your fourth best player is as good as Jared Allen, you should be contending for an NBA championship. That's how good the Cleveland Cavaliers have been. So I'm really excited to see how this season continues to pan out. So many great spots for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but there's going to be weaknesses. There's probably going to be a 3-game losing streak at some point, and we're going to have to say there is some flaws with this basketball team. Obviously, they lost to Miami, Atlanta twice. The Hawks seem to be their kryptonite right now, and they lost to the Celtics, but they won that game back. They have a tough matchup with Milwaukee going back into the regular season, and Milwaukee's a lot better than they were when the Cavs played them the first couple times. So there's a lot of work to be done for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but this is one hell of a start to the season, and I'm very proud of where the Cleveland Cavaliers are. Now, to wrap up the show, let's talk about Kirk Herbstreit real quick. His points about Ohio State playing in a different facility other than Ohio Stadium against Tennessee. As I've mentioned numerous times, Michigan, to me, is the beginning part, national championship second, so the goal has already not been achieved this year. You have to do those two things. So to me, the season's a failure. If the Ohio State Buckeyes lose, I'm honestly fine with it. I want to move off of Ryan Day, but there's obviously the reports that Ohio State's probably not going to move off of Ryan Day, and if they don't, then shame on them because they're not going to beat Michigan. That's the way I view it. I can go on about Ohio State, Michigan either way, but still root for the Buckeyes if you want. I mean, as I said, I'm not necessarily all in on that because they they lost to Michigan, and I want Ryan Day to be fired. But having said that, there's still a game against Tennessee in front of them, and Kirk Herbstreit made probably a valid point on that. Would that matter for the fans? I don't know. This is how the playoffs work now in college football. Ohio State has an opportunity here to beat Tennessee, a team they're pretty evenly matched with in my view. But the SEC and the Big Ten are two different conferences, and so we're going to see that collide in this game. And I'm excited for it. I really, really am. And I thought Herbstreit made a good point about that, and I respect the hell out of that guy because he was a great quarterback for Ohio State. He knows what the hell he's talking about. And, of course, he's doing games for Amazon now, so in the NFL. But, he knows his stuff. So credit to Herbstreit on that. But the big thing for me, and we'll talk about all this on Thursday's show when we preview the playoff bracket and who I think is going to win, who may end up winning the national title, is Ohio State tends to tighten up in a lot of these big games. And Ryan Day tends to tighten up in them too. We've seen Ryan Day have some impressive outings of coaching. Like I think he coached a phenomenal game against Georgia, although it didn't matter because you were a kicker away and you still lost the ball game. But having said that, he coached really well in that game. Ohio State might have won it. It was close. Having said that, though, I'm not so sure that necessarily sustains itself. I think Ryan Day is reckless a little bit as a coach. We saw against Missouri last year how bad Ohio State could be. It looked not even like the Ohio State we knew of old. Ryan Day in these big moments tends to fall apart, and that's why I like Tennessee in this game. Part of me, as I said, may want Tennessee to win just because you lost to Michigan already. I mean, it's a mess. It really is when it comes to the Buckeyes. But a lot of emotions running high, and this is a new world now with college football. There's this NIL, there's these college playoff brackets, 12 teams. We have to see how this pans out. I think it's going to be a fun run either way. But the Buckeyes, I'm not rooting to say root against the Buckeyes at all costs. Because they didn't beat Michigan, I'm disappointed. And obviously, I want to see some change in this program. So we'll see what takes place there, but Kirk Herbstreit spot on. That's going to be it for today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. As I said, Thursday, we're previewing every college football playoff game that's listed on the slate, who I think's going to win, who I think could win the whole darn thing. We'll also talk a little bit more about the NFL and the NBA, some of the highlights there. There's more baseball postseason moves. We'll have them coming up for you as well. Lots to get to, of course. The Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Guardians. If they make any moves, we'll talk about all that coming up and more this upcoming weekend. I know I got that emphasis on Ohio sports, but I do plan on talking all sports more often and not. We'll have plenty more guests coming up on the show as well. Shout out to my buddy Jerome again for last Tuesday. So have a good one, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty, and we will see you on the flip next time.